Get the Wheel Deal at Industrial Wheels and Castors. They carry the biggest range of wheels and casters, spares and accessories on the Gold Coast. Or get rolling with their huge range of trolleys and hand trucks, including shopping trolleys, baskets, stock trolleys, warehouse trolleys, flat decks and many more. Click industrialwheelsandcasters.com.au.
Rolling Masters, Industrial Wheels and Castors.
Check out their new showroom at 9 Greg Chapel Drive, Burleigh Heads.